Hi, this is Bob from Hobby Concepts, and yes, this is the Grand Hauler flatbed from last week's video, but now with something new. I added sound and lights, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And I fit an MFC, a speaker, all the wiring, it's got cab lighting, a driver figure, all in the day cab, so I'll show you how I do that. It looks spectacular with lights, just really adds a little bit more pop to this truck, and of course with the sound, it sounds excellent. So let's get started. When I last left this truck, we had just finished it. My last videos, the flatbed Grand Hauler conversion, and it turned out really nice. But now it's time to add lights to it. So it's got, of course, your standard headlights. Already has a roof bar, and it's got an interesting layout in the rear bumper here. So there's 3 running lights, turn signal, brake light, backup light. So we're going to add those lights and maybe a few others. Now I already have a 10-channel radio in it, and so I got lots of channels to play with. Of course, it takes 5 to run the truck. 1 for the shift, 1 for the steering, 1 for the throttle, and then the MFC does horns here, lights here, and some special functions here. And then I have this switch hooked to the light bar. So I've got an extra switch here and a couple of knobs that I can take advantage of. So I'm going to use a Tamiya multifunction unit, MFC. You've seen these before on my channel quite a bit. No big deal. So we'll kind of go through installing that. The big deal, of course, is fitting it into a day cab and how I do that. And then, since we have that unique light layout in the back, I am going to change the Tamiya lights to some of these 3mm and 5mm white lights. And I'm going to use an electronic switch because I want to add light interior cab lighting because I'm going to put a driver in it. So I'm going to use an electronic switch for that. Now you'll notice that these are all white. And the reason for that is that, okay, well the backup lights are white, that's obvious. But then we've got red lenses for the rest of these lights. So we'll take the running lights, for example, these 3 little ones. If you use a red LED and shine it through a red lens, it really diminishes the power because the lens counteracts the red in the LED. So if you've got colored lenses, it's probably best to use white LEDs. Now, if this, for example, I wanted to be amber, I could use a white lens and an amber LED, and that's how I do the Grand Haulers. But on this one, everything is kind of already set with colors, so using white LEDs makes sense. So let me pop the body off and then we'll talk about installing this. Got the body loose here. So we'll just pull that off. Now you can see that's my wire for the light bar. And move that aside. So that's what the interior looks like right now. So what's going to happen is we're going to put the MFC here. We're going to have to remove the seats to do that. The speed control won't be necessary any longer because it's built into the MFC. So the speaker will go up here. And in order to do that, I need to use a set of these front speaker mounts. And they just mount kind of like this, and the speaker will mount up front. So I'll do that first, and then I'll go to work on getting the MFC in. The receiver can stay in the same place, and we'll fit everything in the body. And then, because I don't want to be able to look in and see electronics, we will make a floor for this that probably comes just under the dashboard, and then I'll put a driver figure in it, and you can see there's a headliner in this, which is a sheet of plastic held in with 2 screws. So we'll pull that out, put a couple lights in it, for our cab lights, should be a pretty straightforward setup. So let's start with the speaker. I took the deck off and removed the speed control. I installed a set of these front mount speaker brackets. They just go underneath the screws here and behind the bolts here, and now the speaker will just bolt onto these brackets like this, and that takes care of my speaker location. Now when you put these on, there's a brace here in the front of the body that needs to be cut off. So I usually just go in here with a pair of good nippers and just cut that off. And then the body just fits on like normal. And of course, when the grill's on here, that brace doesn't do anything because the grill is bolted across solidly too. So, about bolt the speaker on that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is these raised little nibs here. I will cut these off with a knife to make this a flat, smooth surface, because my MFC is going to stick down on here. And I'm not going to mount this back right away because I'm going to pull all the wiring up first. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to install the speaker here, and then I'm going to take and install the MFC control panel underneath the step on the driver's side, which is designed for. So I'll get those two things installed, and then we'll talk about running some wiring and making a box around the speaker to make it sound better. I've got my speaker mounted. It's very solid, very nice. But what happens is with this open all the way around here, it degrades the sound. So I usually make some kind of a box to fit around here. And this is just a piece of plastic cardstock, which I will slide in here like that. Just see how it all kind of looks. And pencil. And I will cut it. I'll make one for the other side, and I'll make one for the front. And then I'll use some clear packing tape to just kind of hold it all together. It doesn't have to be fancy, but what that does is makes a much better sound. So plastic sides, plastic front, some clear tape, and we'll have our own little speaker box all ready to go. You can see my box. It's just made out of plastic card, and I just kind of stuck it in with this sticky E6000 glue. So that gives me my box. I mounted the control panel under the step and brought the wiring up here. So now I'm going to go ahead and prep things for the tail lights. I'll show you how I do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the backup light string that comes with the MFC, and it only has one bulb. And if you remember, at the back bumper of the truck, we have two bulbs, and they're also larger, 5 millimeters. So we're going to take a couple of 5 millimeter bulbs, these jobbies right here, and what we're going to do, and I've shown this before, is we're going to clip off the 3 millimeter bulb and throw it away, and we're going to solder these two 5 millimeter bulbs on, which does two things. It makes my wire longer, which is good because it'll reach, and two, it gives me two larger size bulbs. So to do that, all I have to do is solder the two black wires together, and the gray wire here, and the two white wires together, and the white wire here. So I'll solder that up and show you what it looks like. This is my finished backup lights. So you can see now I have two 5 millimeter bulbs hooked to this. So now I have to do the same thing for the turn signals, which are going to be a single bulb, and the brake lights, which will be two bulbs hooked to the brake light string. What looks like a big mess is actually not as messy as it seems. So I've finished soldering them up, And here's what I've got. These are my 3 running lights, the ones that'll be in the center, hooked to 1 wire. This is a turn signal, okay, either left or right. This is the other turn signal, exactly the same. This is the one that we hooked up earlier, which is the reverse lights. And these are the brake tail lights. So now I can go ahead and put them in the bed. And I'm going to maybe even pop the bed off to put these in. I'll get it organized here. I actually don't need to take the bed off. These lights, there's plenty of room for me to work here. The way these work is these just snap in. And when this is through the metal rear plate here, they are a tight fit. But let's take the backup lights. So this will just snap in to the holder. Just like that. And then we'll do the other side. So there they are, snapped in place. Now, I've found that even though they snap in, they don't hold super duper tight. So probably what I'll do is, once I get them all in place, I'll use my hot glue gun and just put a little tiny bit of hot glue on them. So here's my brake turn signals, which are brake tail lights, which are the next one out. We'll snap those in. And then I've got my turn signals. This back bumper on this thing is really good looking. It's going to look nice all lit up. And then I've got my running lights, and there's the 3 small ones that go in the center here. Those you can't see very well. Those are definitely going to take some hot glue because the lenses aren't long enough to go all the way through the bumper. So I'm going to fire up the hot glue gun, put these in, finish those ones. I'll come back and we'll tie up this wiring and test it. Well, I have my lights mounted, and I took everything and plugged it into the MFC here because I like to test things before I actually install them permanently. So we'll just turn this on here. And so I want to test my lights, make sure they all work before I tie up the wiring. I'll get the volume off. Okay, so the first thing would be my brake lights. And you can see those work just fine. Okay, the next thing would be my backup lights, which work just fine. My turn signals are working fine. And then there's my tail lights and back off, and my hazards. So all the lights work great. I can go ahead and I'm going to unplug this and then we'll tie them up. My truck is back on its feet, and this is the wiring from the back bumper. So I just pulled it along the chassis. You can see it right here. I spiral wrapped it, pulled it up, and it'll come up through the floor here, and the wiring from the control box will come up here, and that basically puts them right up into the cab area once I mount this down. So I've got all the body wiring done, so now all I have to do is all the chassis wiring done, so all I have to do now is the wiring in the body. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this down just to get the part back on the truck, and then I'll go to work on the body. So what I've done here is I taken my headliner and I installed a couple 3mm bulbs in it. I've gotten the headlights and the turn signals installed in their normal locations. So this will just, we'll just snap in the body up here. My wiring will pull down, and that'll give me my interior lights. And then I'm going to cut a piece of plastic that fits in here, probably right below the dash, to give me a cover for the MFC that'll be mounted up in this area, and then I'll put a driver figure on it. And I'm going to do that, I'll show it to you. But that'll give us a nice interior driver and still hide all the electronics that are underneath. So I'm going to install the dash, I'll put this headliner back in, and we'll go to work on that. So I want to mount my MFC, and that'll sit right here. I just have to be careful that I can get it within the confines of the body, and I can. And it'll mount something like this. So I've got some double sticky tape here already laid down. And what I want to do is get this set up just so it fits in there. Okay, just like that. Now my back bulkhead will still fit. It's very tight. There's my back bulkhead. Little tiny bit of a gap there. The cab will go over this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this wire down underneath. Since I've got my battery down here, I'm going to have to extend this. I'll pull it down through here, pull it along the frame. I'll pull these up, get them out of the way, plug them in. I'll plug in the rear lights. I'll plug in the servos and the receiver. I'll plug in the speaker, and then I can kind of fit my body and see how much room I have. Because what I'd like to do, I'll show you this body here. What I'd like to do is keep this dash. So I've got a piece of plastic here. My theory is to stick it to the bottom of the dash, kind of like that, and then I can put a driver figure on it, and the plastic will cover the MFC. I just don't know for sure if there's enough room in here. If there isn't, I'll have to take the dash off and raise the plastic up a little bit higher, but I'd like to try to keep the dash. So we'll see how that works out. I've got to do this wiring bit before I can do that though, so I'll do that right now. I took some time and got this mounted, tied up all my wiring. You can see I taped the antennas on both sides of the speaker box. There's a top view. Just kind of tucked everything in, tied everything up as good as I could to get this as low as possible. This is my, I add an electronic switch into channel 9. Excuse me, and this will be for the dome lights. This is of course the hookup for the light bar, and then my MFC lights that are the headlights and the turn signals will just plug in down here. So I test fit the body on to see how much room I had, and I did not have enough room to put a bottom underneath the dash. So what I'm going to have to do is take the dash off and then make a plate that's just a little bit higher to give me a little bit more room. I still can do my driver figure, and I can still do some detailing, so I will I'll make that up and show you what it looks like, and then I can stick that in here, and then that'll hide everything underneath. So it's going together really well. I also took a piece of carbon fiber sticker and stuck it on the front of the plastic here, so any kind of view through the grill will just show a black surface. I could have painted it black. I got lots of this sticker. So, okay, well, we'll go finish up that interior. I took my plastic sheet and I sawed off the backs of the Tamiya semi-seats, and I sawed off the steering wheel, and then I sawed off the top half of a driver figure. He will sit like that, and then this will go up inside the cab, and it'll hide everything underneath, and it'll look really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this, and then I'll airbrush the driver and get him stuck on there, and then I'll glue a couple of rails inside the body for this to sit on. But that cleans up the inside nicely. I think it'll look pretty good. And as you can see, I've got my driver figure painted and glued onto the base plate, and some seat backs and the steering wheel. So that's all ready to go in. What I did on the body was I glued in a couple strips of plastic on either side, and then this will just sit on top of those and go across. And what I'll do is I'll use a couple little drips of hot glue to glue it in. And why hot glue? Well, because it doesn't stick so good that you can't take it out later. So if you need to pop this out in the future to clean the windows or something, it's easy to get out and stick back in. You can see the dome lights up here in the headliner, and then basically now all my wiring is ready to plug in. So I've got my light bar plug in, my dome light plug in, and then these are the turn signals and the headlights. So we'll get those plugged in, get this glued in here, and put the body on it. I think that'll pretty much get this thing rolling. Okay, I've got the body on. So we'll fire this up and just kind of check everything, see how it works. Okay, I'll turn the light bar off. So we now have our lights. Let's check the tail lights first. So we should have a brake lights, yep, reverse lights, and then we'll have running lights, emergency flashers, and then turn signals, right turn and left turn, and hazard lights. Those back bumper lights look really nice. On the front here, we've got basically just headlights. Right here. And then we have our light bar, of course. Now the light bar, every time you flip it, goes through a different function. And then off. And then the driver figures in there, looks pretty good, and I've got my interior lights which light the driver up and actually make it look pretty good. Let me see if I can get a better shot of that. I reposition the camera so we can get a picture of the interior lights. Let's see if I can. Yeah, he looks good in there. And all the wiring is really well hidden. Okay, I'm going to move my pad out of the way. We'll get some beauty shots here. So there we go. The Grand Hauler flatbed from last week's video, but now with sound and lights. Everything is all hidden nicely within the day cab. And I've got a half interior with a driver figure and a steering wheel. Looks really good. Same setup as before. The battery is underneath. So everything's hidden. Turned out really nice. This truck is... I really like the looks of this truck. But the lights, of course, just really finish it off. RCP57 bed. You can look at the build video on this to get links for that. And now we've got our our tail all lit up and our cab lit up, and pretty straightforward, but turned out really well. So give me a thumbs up. Those help with the YouTube rankings. Please subscribe to the channel. We do lots of fun build things here with Tamiya trucks and other things. So appreciate you watching. Appreciate you subscribing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.